Today to give you my presentation on how I plan on leading for equity. Just to start off, a little bit of background information on where I'm from and what I did my equity audit on. I did my equity audit on Pulaski High School. It's a rural community public school located just outside of Green Bay. The district in large serves over 3,700 students in total. The high school itself is about 1,100 or so. We do have 5 elementary schools and 1 middle school, all feeding into 1 high school. And as you can see on the data from our school report card on the right, we do have a majority white population, 91.4%, with smaller percentages of race and ethnicity. And our big student groups, our students with disabilities, are 12.9%, economically disadvantaged are 17.9%, and then we have 0.8% of English learners. My equity principles are my equity non-negotiables. I came up with 5, and I took most of them from the ICS website directly, as well as some from Dr. Ehrenberger. So number 1, that is eliminating inequity does begin within ourselves. In order to truly address inequities in the school and in order to, be effective and implement everything, we obviously have to look to ourselves first. And one of the ways that we can do this is obviously education and research on our own, and that starts with the equity audit. And as a school, really taking a deep dive into that data, looking at what we believe, and then comparing it to what is true and kind of breaking down those inequities that are systematic in our building. Number 2, we have to believe that it is our responsibility to prevent student failure. If we claim that it is our responsibility for student success, then obviously we have to own that student failure as well. And I think this is something that is often overlooked in schools. I think we tend to blame the victim. We tend to kind of push off responsibility and come up with a myriad of other reasons why students fail instead of looking at what problems are inequitable within our own building. Number 3, all staff have to be aligned or are aligned to the co-plan, to co-serve, to co-learn, to support cohesive instruction. So this will really, build off of what we already have at Pulaski. We already have a team teaching model, and really kind of, modifying that, making sure it's equitable and making sure it's best, and we're all kind of on the same page and working together in order to really have that cohesive instruction. Number 4, students are proportionally represented in the core of teaching and learning. As I'll talk about in my presentation, there's some disproportionality kind of represented throughout some key areas of our curriculum, and we want to make sure that proportion is accurate. And then finally, number 5, we are offering high quality grade level access to curriculum and making sure that is essential. That's kind of a given, but right now, looking at, RTI and looking at our Tier 1, instruction or core instruction in the classroom, there are clearly some gaps and some holes that need to be addressed. So I thought this was very essential as a non-negotiable or equity principle in our building. 3 big inequities that I would like to disrupt, kind of connecting to just these core topics in general. Students with disabilities and students of color are both being significantly underserved compared to their white peers. This is something that we really want to make sure that we attack and disrupt in our school and make sure we fix these issues. These both kind of connect with this overarching idea of disproportionality. There's definitely a disproportionate number of access to advanced placement courses in particular. We do not have a gifted and talented program at Pulaski in name. However, we do have AP courses, we have advanced courses, and we have leveled courses. And there's a disproportionate representation kind of across the board in those. And so that's something that I'll be talking about a little bit, and I would like to take a look at as a result of our equity audit. Starting off with our students with disabilities, I took a look at the ACT Aspire and our English Language Arts section, and you'll notice just at a first glance, if we're looking just at, at our basic levels as well as advanced, our students who are labeled with a disability are coming across as being way overrepresented in those areas, and that's in English and also in math. We have it's almost double the number of students are marked as basic, and then, you've got almost triple the number of students without a disability who are proficient, and that's very concerning to me, given that we do have a high percentage of students with disabilities. And this is our freshman and our sophomore classes when they take the ACT Aspire. So of course it does transition then over into their ACT composite score, and this is truly shocking to me. Our students without disabilities are scoring an average of a 20.3, and our students who are labeled with a disability, our composite score is a 15.8. Additionally, and kind of a reflection of that, I believe, if we're looking at our AP exam enrollment, we had 187 students last year signed up for AP classes who were students without disabilities, and then we only had 3 additional students who were labeled with disabilities. So out of the 190 students who took an exam, or the exams that were taken, only 3 students had a disability label or were labeled with disabilities. And to me, this is really indicative of a culture where perhaps there's been some deficit thinking about these students with disabilities, and these students are kind of pushed into classes that are maybe a little bit lower level. So that's just one incidence where the enrollment number is quite striking. Overall, we have these students with disabilities. These are kind of all the charts all together. We've got these 12.9% of students that are grossly being represented in the advanced classes, and they're being underserved by their teachers and the system at a whole, and that's something that we really need to look at. This for me was something that was truly striking, because I believed that this is something that Pulaski did very well. I thought, the access to quality curriculum instruction was there, because currently our students with disabilities are in team taught classes. They're push-in classes. They are not pulled out or given intervention outside of the general ed classroom. All of the special ed students who are going on to be independent adults are in the general ed classroom, but obviously they do not have equal access to this curriculum and the instruction, so that is something that definitely needs to be fixed. Moving on to our students of color, it's going to be kind of the same pattern here as with our students with disabilities. Some disproportionate numbers, especially among our Hispanic students, which is one of our higher percentages of students of color. You'll notice that the basic level is very high comparatively to our white students and our American Indian students and our students of 2 or more races. That orange bar, the Hispanic section, is very high. And even if you look at the advanced section as well and the proficient, there's just an imbalance here. And although we don't have a high percentage of students of color, we do have students of color, and this is something that we really need to be aware of, because we are clearly underserving them in our classrooms. And this is, again, just freshman and sophomore. Obviously carries on then over to the ACT composite score, with our white students scoring almost an entire composite score higher than our Hispanic students, and 2 composite points higher than our black students, which is definitely an indication that they're being underserved. Again, when we're talking about advanced placement exam participation, we're looking at this pie chart, and we have a majority of students who are white, and we know that those students are majority without disability as well. So this is just another indicator that we are not offering or encouraging participation for whatever reason, most likely deficit thinking of our students of color, not encouraging them and making sure that they're getting access to the same types of classes that are proportionally represented, in our classrooms, all classrooms. Finally, when we come to my action plan, this is not all-encompassing, because as we know, this equity process and moving from an inequitable system to an equitable system takes a long time. But here are some steps that I really thought were important. Number 1, being able to diagnose issues and educate staff. That's going to be step 1. Going through that equity audit, really breaking down what our key problems are, educating our staff, and making sure that everyone's on board. You're always going to have people that kind of push back, but we can't wait any longer for everybody to be, to have consensus. I don't know that you can reach consensus. So, I think if people are not on board and don't want to practice the equitable practices, then they need to look elsewhere for a profession. And we need to really have that be a fine line. Number 2, dismantling the practices of tracking and ability grouping. As Theo Harris and Scanlon represented, although we don't do gifted and talented here, there are clear indicators that we have some lower level track classes. Perhaps our students with disability are overrepresented in their team taught classes that we do have offered for them. We have some lower level classes such as our English Y classes and our Math 2A classes, as well as some PBL classes where the students are kind of all shuffled into these low level classes at a slower pace, and that's where they stay. As you mentioned in your lecture, Dr. Ehrenberger, if they're not given access to high quality instruction, they're not going to learn at high levels. And so I think one of the first equitable practices that we can do is getting rid of those classes. That connects nicely to my third step, which is an improvement in quality curriculum instruction, and as well as an implementation of a co-plan to co-serve model. So we are a PLC school. I do believe that there are some inequitable practices. However, within this, really making sure that we're co-creating lessons with our special education teachers, having us all work together to facilitate our learning for our students and really build lessons that are best for everybody, kind of co-serving all of our students and taking really a good look at that tier one, our curriculum, making sure that it serves all of our students in the way that it should. Step 4, dismantling that deficit thinking. This connects back to the Valencia article, the construct of deficit thinking, that we read in class, and just kind of really taking a look at where we are clearly showing deficit thinking, as evidenced by the data that we have on our students of color, on our students with disabilities, as well as other options or other examples as well, and really kind of dismantling that, pushing towards asset-based thinking. We really have to flip our culture from being a deficit-based to asset-based and really look at these students as being a part of, the general education classroom. And then overall, number 5, just really working together to improve school culture and building a culture, of academic optimism. Hoyan Miskell said that, this collaborative work process, this high academic expectation, and really working together to improve our teaching and our learning. This is all going to create this culture of academic optimism, which is only going to improve things for all of our students. I think, to put together these 5 things can help, start us on our equity journey as a building, and hopefully there are some things in here that, I certainly know as far as going through my equity audit, I certainly learned a lot of new things, and there's a lot of data to look at still, but I believe this is a step in the right direction. So thank you very much, and my references are here for you on my next slide.